Welcome to GM Mastermind, a tabletop RPG podcast that features a panel of game masters known as the Brain Trust. In this episode, we'll be discussing story as product, introducing members of the Brain Trust. Welcome Anthony, aka Runeslinger. Anthony's been GMing for 39 years. RPGs he's run the most include basic role-playing, Mythras, Ubiquity, Storyteller, aka World of Darkness, and Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars. Currently, he's been exploring cosmic horror via Leagues or Call of Cthulhu, Blue Planet, and Broken Compass. You'll be able to find him on Twitter at Runeslinger. Welcome Brett to the Brain Trust. Brett has been GMing over 30 years. He's the creative behind his published campaign setting, The Streets of Avalon, and has been a co-host for the popular RPG podcast Gaming NBS. He's a fan of AD&D, Osric, Call or Trail of Cthulhu, Warhammer Fantasy, and MERP, and ran a 20-year vampire game. You can find him on Twitter at Fofford881. Hi, I'm Sean. I'm the host of the show. Currently, I'm involved in a Forbidden Lands ongoing campaign as a player, and I'm also the handler of a Delta Green Impossible Landscapes campaign. You can find me on Twitter at GM_Mastermind. Now, on to the show. Anthony, Brett, thanks for joining and welcome to the Brain Trust of GM Mastermind. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about story as game and gaming for story. And I know I've got that butchered because I just mentioned it to Anthony, who feels passionate about the topic. And I invited Brett along for the ride as well, which I know he has some things to say. If you're not familiar with Brett, you're probably nodding. If you are, you're probably nodding your head while you're listening to this. So when we talk about, because story is at kind of the foundation of a lot of role-playing games. We throw the term story around all the time. You know, it's about the story. It's story games. We even have kind of a subgenre of role-playing games that we sometimes refer to as that's a story game. And that's not necessarily in a derogatory tone, though some might snoot at it a little bit and turn their noses up at it. But when we talk about story, there's the story that's produced from playing a mutual game, and whatever product has come out of that is the story. We tell our friends about them. And then there is, which Anthony alluded to right before hitting record, was, hey, we've got a module. This is a story piece of it, and through that. Am I on the right page? Are we all on the right page?
It sounds like we're at an excellent place to begin.
I think so too. Sean, you and I tried to hit this topic ages ago, feels like forever ago, on Gaming BS. And I think Anthony's perspective, what you were laying on us before this, I like what you're saying, and how we're taking the term story, and it becomes this weird Lego block that we just keep tacking on to everything. You know, like it's a spaceship with a story on it. It's this thing with this thing, and we just keep plugging it in there. Yeah. And I think it, I like what you had to say at pre the record. So I don't know if you want to start there again, man. Let's just tear it apart.
All right. Well, let's try. We have the. How often have you heard someone say, "I can't wait to play in your story"?
Never.
We've never heard because they don't want to play with you.
No, no. Everyone uses the term game in the circles. I want to play in your game. Right. I want you to run a game for me.
Now, that's not to say, Anthony, that it doesn't have a synonymous meaning or undertone, I guess, inference, if you will. Yeah.
Now, I would find that. I mean, that's what I grew up with, right? Tom's game, Tony's game, Anthony's game, Bill's game, whoever's game, and that would be synonymous with world or their own setting. That's comfortable. When it shifts into story, it carries this other implication, right? And now kind of across the internet, we've seen that the language has changed to role-playing games are collaborative storytelling. Right. And just semantically, that carries a weight of the story exists already and we are telling it. We're not shaping it. We're not creating it. We're not discovering it. We're telling it. It's a specific choice of word used either intentionally or unintentionally. And
no, I get it. I mean, when
listeners.
Were you? Did you ever play any of the old White Wolf games, Vampire or anything like that?
I played all of the old White Wolf games.
Same. So that was really cool that you're a storyteller, right? So I got a hat back there. It says storyteller on it from when I was running Vampire constantly. Buddies of mine gave it to me as a gift, and there was this cool. The connotation there was that it was more, at least in my group, it was more the game. We still called it a game, but one of the things that drew us to it was the concept that there's going to be some really cool story stuff and less game. And I think what my friends meant at the time was that game meant D&D, kill monster, take stuff, right? And or at least in that very crushed down, simplistic version of what an early D&D game or something like that, or how we may have grown up through high school or whatever. But it was kind of that game system for whatever reason. And if you look at it, it's really a terrible, or some of the early stuff was like from an elegance perspective not that good. But that was my first real encounter with the term story, telling a story, using the game to facilitate a story and understanding through lines and using storytelling terms to build your game,
right. And it talked to us, right? On a simple level. You didn't play a session, there was a chapter.
Correct.
There in a story, in a chronicle. So we're inundating ourselves. We're steeping ourselves in the stew of story. And then the Game Master section actually talked about literary technique.
Yes.
Which was really helpful. But at the same time, it framed that whole conversation in a literature stance or box, making us think about, I am the storyteller. I have to prepare a story for these people to experience, rather than that game of personal horror tagline for Vampire, right? Which may have been an easier way to play, right?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think, if nothing else, so the concept of like, hey, let's start to use these type of terms to figure out how we're facilitating a thing. And I think the idea, I think you're very right there, is that I have to prepare a story so that everybody can experience the story. And a friend of mine used to do this for a very long time. And he had a conversation with me, like, what am I, quote unquote, doing wrong? This is bugging me. I said, dude, you are just railroading the heck out of people. And he said, I don't think I am. And we sat down, we said, well, you have a story you're going to tell come hell or high water. And he's like, am I? Absolutely. And I went back to like the vampire stuff we used to do. I said, remember how you guys would come in with these weird ass characters and I'd have a plot or something and like, well, I need to adjust it. We all adjusted based on what you guys were doing. And then the collaboration term started to get thrown around more in my group and other places. Like, look, it's not just me building the story that you're going to experience come hell or high water. This is Brett's vampire story for all you to bask in. It's now a thing. I'm gonna start it off with this inciting incident. Let's see what y'all do with it, and we'll figure this shit out as we go. So, I think I'm following with you.
Right on.
One of the things that people mention when you get into that mode that you allude to, Brad, about the game master having a story. That's what they say, right? You go to a con, it's a one shot. The game master is gonna roll out this game. And the players come back and you ask them how it went. And it's like, well, let's just say that game master had a story to tell and you're damn well going to be there to listen to it.
Right. Especially the demo game, right? Of whatever new system you want to give them the highlights or what they can expect from the system. And how do you do that without having a certain
level
agenda?
Of rigor? Yeah, if you don't have a level of rigor and agenda, like, look, there will be a chase, there will be a gunfight, there will be a lockpicking session. Oh, and this social encounter. Oh, and this social encounter too, because those are highlights of our game system. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's much more
So
scripted.
again, nothing wrong with it, but it's a methodology, or it's a position from which to stand or start. Like, you could invite people to play a game and ask them to generate characters before you give them the pitch.
True.
Get the characters and then build a pitch that is relevant to the characters. Or you could give them the pitch and ask them to make characters to fit.
Correct. Yep.
Or you could not communicate, and you make your pitch and they make their characters, and we'll see what happens. I mean, these are pretty common situations.
That was especially common in my early forays, high school level. And not that was a bad way to play, but it was like, hey, we got together and, I roll up a fighter. I've got this, I got this. And my high school DM would be like, I have Tomb of Horrors. I have, I have White Blue Mountain. We're like, I have no idea what the hell that is. Let's go in. Let's do that thing. Oh, you have this new game. Sure, we'll try that. We didn't,
Yeah.
Is there a way that you prefer to think of story in a game, or are you more thinking that it? How do I ask this? So it seems like you've got a. I'm honestly, I don't know. I love using the word story, and I love the literary terms that we talked about. Your inciting incidents, your denouements, your like rising action, your spines, your through lines, blah blah. It's very helpful for me to think about things. Even retroactively, when I look back at a really good session and go, wow, that was really cool. I feel like this might be wrapping up, looking at it literally in reverse, saying, yeah, we totally just did the big thing. It's time to wrap this up. This will make sense. I can wrap this game now. But so how are you? Like I said, I'm open to lots of different ways to do it. I'm just, it seems like you've got a more Anthony way to do it.
God. Yeah, the terms are useful. And I don't want to create an impression that they're not. I worry from time to time that we import a lot of vocabulary into what we do, like film criticism terms or literary criticism terms, rather than developing our own. And that has an unintended side effect of limiting how we play, or obscuring from us what we're actually doing when we play. So when you look back over the course of the last 5 or 10 sessions, and you see the story emerge that you weren't putting into action, that's kind of a thrill. And then when you can break it down and say, this is when the climax really started to build, and we're coming, and the technique that I used of starting them in media res, or whatever it happens to be that you're going to do, it was a benefit to it. My instincts were connecting with what was actually happening at the table or not. But we can look at it the other way around, is this is a mystery story, and so I have to have these elements or it won't be a mystery story, and these characters need to conform to these behaviors, right? So
I like that a lot. I like that a lot, because that works. I've used Call of Cthulhu as like a canonical example of like, look, if you're going to have a mystery thing you're supposed to solve, a very clue heavy, follow the breadcrumbs, combat scary type of, if you don't have a monster, a thing to hunt down, or a thing to figure out, or whatever it is there, and the players really need to buy into that. Like, look, this is the type of story, even though I'm not going to necessarily tell you, at least how I would see it, is that this is the actual story we're going to tell, and type of thing, not being too prescriptive, but like, look, the type of story, the bumpers, if you will, are cosmic horror, this, and this. If you come in here with a prize fighting boxer, and somebody else is a lion tamer, and somebody else is a plumber, this is not going to fit. We need to all get in on the right theme here.
What is the story we're wanting to tell? Right? Or play? What is the story we're trying to play? And I think that's, some people use the CATS method of concept, aim, tone, subject matter. And, you're right, Brett. It's when, and even Anthony, when you're talking about like terms being thrown around and sometimes vocabulary being created.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of this stuff, and even the show itself, we talk about, well, what's session 0? What's that? Well, session 0, I don't believe in session 0. Well, how do you coordinate a session? Like, how do you schedule? I mean, a session 0 could be 3 sentences. It's still before session 1, right? And so we get into these nuances. So you talk about story, and then you talk about, well, what's the tone? Like we're trying to do in Brett's example, okay, we're going to do horror, cosmic evil, tense, suspense, whatever. So that's tone, and then it has to align with the type of story that we're telling, right? And it's all kind of an amalgamation of all these things that help everybody get on the same page, I think, right?
Yeah. When we're first starting, we do a lot of things by accident, and we're going to find things that we do like and things that we don't like, and the feedback is going to guide us towards the items that we do like. But then after we become experienced, or if we stop and come back to the hobby, there's a certain awareness that we need to have to apply. Like, what was it that I liked, or when did we have fun? What was fun about all of these things? And these days, as Brett was saying earlier, the conversation is so much about the story these days that the character gets lost, in a sense. So I remember what got me into role-playing games was the way it was pitched to me was, you can be the person in the story. You make the decisions. For me, role-playing games are about the decision process, the opportunity to make a decision and act on it from the character's perspective. So I can choose not to go down into the basement, or I can choose to go down into the horrible basement with a shotgun, or with a spell book, or with an army, or whatever. It's my turn to experience what I would do in that situation. And I'm not thinking about a story at all. I'm thinking about that character.
I like that perspective too, and I think you're right, that can get lost in some cases. And so I'm going to see if I can ramble off on this for a bit. So when we're doing that, the interesting thing is then you've got one of the pieces that was very attractive to me when it first got pitched to me, and I still actually pitch this to other people. I'm like, you can do darn near anything you want, right? You could choose to play along, you could choose to argue, characters can do this, that, or the other thing. However, I think that there's pieces of that where we want to, and maybe this is where it starts to muddy that water a little bit, or it gets it weirder, is where I'm like, well, dude, we're here to play this game. Maybe unspoken, or this story is what's supposed to be happening here. This was the tone we all agreed to, and you're being a dick because you won't go upstairs. Why won't you go upstairs? My character just doesn't see a reason for it. Now that's a jerk answer. Why are you doing that? You come on, why won't you play with us? And these are extreme examples, but I've seen pieces and parts of that at the table, and I think there is the other thing that I've found with that is, to me, what I would consider a very good player would be somebody like yourself, Anthony, would say, you know what, I get what you're saying, Brett, but I'm sticking to my guns and I'm not going to the basement. You can go if you want to, but my character's terrified. She's not going downstairs. And Sean says, okay, cool. You could then sit for an hour with quote unquote nothing to do while Sean dealt with me and Eileen as we sorted out what was in the basement. But then you took the responsibility to say, I made a decision. I could see where the action was going. I chose to sit out the action. Not going to play in the action tonight. We're going to hang out up here. And I trust effectively that the dungeon master or the game master or storyteller, or whatever we want to call him, the keeper, Sean, is going to get back to me at some point. But hey, this is where the action is. 2 of the 3 of us are down here. I'll sit back a little bit. And I don't know if I would say that's, I wouldn't speak boldly for the whole hobby to say that's lackey in general, but I don't know if that perspective is a common perspective at all. I don't know if that's true, but I like what you're saying there. It makes me think of what I have players at my table right now who will be like, look, I'm not doing that. I'm like, Lenny, you sure? He goes, nope, not doing it. You're going to be bored, man. That's cool. No, you deal with those guys. I'm going to think about what I'm going to do. All right. I turn over. 4 other dudes are doing this thing, and he's thinking.
Right.
I just
so
had
it's
that.
an interesting perspective.
I just had that happen in Impossible Landscapes, the big Delta Green scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Where they met the handler and the handler walked off and one of the guys chose to tail the handler. Okay. So they, and it's in New York City. The handler's going to go to the airport at 5 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon on a Friday.
Yep.
And it's rush hour. So, okay, sounds good. See you in about an hour in the game. What are you guys going to do? And then it was them going off, right? Following the handler's leads, right? Like, okay, we're going to go investigate this.
Yep.
Eventually you get the character back and, being a show about trying to facilitate game mastering and how to handle certain situations. One of them is, well, you chose to go off in that direction and hey, they're going on an airport. They're stuck in traffic. So you can get out of the car and walk back, hail another taxi, turn around, go back. No, I'm going to see where this person's going, not knowing they're going to the airport until a certain point. But the rest of the crew isn't traveling as far. So there's a time weirdness to it, right? So eventually what happens is one of the players, knowing that this individual happened to be Harrigan, sitting kind of on the sidelines, says, hey, when does the taxi show up with Harrigan's agent, right? And he tries to pull him back into the story, more of a prompt to me. And in which case we could easily just say, all right, yes, there is a time discrepancy, but you find your way back to the party. It's rightfully so, probably would have taken an hour, and they're only 15 minutes into what they're doing. We got to throw that to the side and get going on so that everybody's involved with the story again, right? Or whatever.
But I think it's interesting, Anthony, because what I'm hearing you say is, I've not thought about this way, but I'm hearing this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's the conceptual, if we're going to use the term story, and I don't have a better one right now, maybe it's chronicle and or whatever we want to call it.
What I ended up with was story as product.
Yeah.
Like it's my intent to tell a story. And story is byproduct. Story happens because of what we've done, and we're not going to shape it in any intended way. So we can still use story, but we have to qualify it a little bit.
Would you say that there's like a level of that then? Because I'm thinking there's like the larger one the group is doing, the larger versions of those, holistically all 3, 4, 5, however many of us at the table. And then there's Brett's PC and Anthony's PC. Right. And I chose to sit upstairs while you all did something. So my byproduct story is Brett was bored off his ass for an hour while everyone else had fun. That's a byproduct, right? Of like, I did that silly thing. Or it also could play into it as like, I'm staying up here to keep guard because I'm terrified the fishmen are coming back.
Yeah.
Okay. So I waited for an hour and I'm terrified. I'm nervous. And you guys come back upstairs. You're haggard, worn. And I'm just as haggard, worn. And like, what the heck happened to you, Brett? Nothing, man. Nothing. But I'm ready for him, So there's pieces of it that's like, I'm experiencing a piece of the story, and then what I share back to you as a group is almost. So I'm wondering if there's levels within that then too. Like
there have to be, and
okay.
The more that you play with it, the more that you're going to see. So we hear people talking about spotlight time all the time, and why? And then the reason's going to vary, because everyone deserves equal time at the table because we all showed up to play together. Is one answer that I like. Another answer you're going to hear is, because we have to balance the performance of the characters within the story, right? So I don't want Brett sitting there at the table bored because he gave up, 3 hours of his evening. At the same time, I might not have the technical tools to do time compression. I might feel too awkward about having Harrigan go to the airport and everyone else go to a nearby coffee shop. I might feel uncomfortable about juggling those two different timelines, and I might worry about meta knowledge, like, but they're going to hear what Harrigan knows because he's at the table, and I don't want them to know that yet. This can be stressful or not stressful. We might not think about it at all, right? You might say, okay, you go to the airport, you see he gets on the plane, he comes back. So what are you going to do next? You might like completely remove the choice of what the people who are waiting are doing in order to do a quick cut, like a smash cut to the next scene. And you tell them that everyone's going to be involved. They're like, there's so many different ways to handle the situation. What I like to get into is, why would I make that decision? Why would I let Brett sit there, or why would I refuse to let Brett sit there? Right. And if I refuse to let Brett sit there, how can I do that? Like, what happens to Brett? Like, do I keep cutting back to him as they reach the bottom of the stairs? Okay, now Brett, in the living room, you hear water dripping.
Yeah. Okay.
And he said, well, I'm going to check out the kitchen. Okay, well, back in the basement, right? Do I piece by piece it all
do
the
you
way
hop
through?
back and forth? And the other thing that's interesting too is, like, if I as game master say, you know what, I can't let Sean sit there, man. Anthony's having all the fun. I gotta pull Sean in here. And I reach over and Sean's like, no, I don't want to. I'm actually, because this is goofy. And I've said this, my son and I were talking about this the other day. I'm like, I don't like watching people play D&D, generally speaking, right? D&D or any role-playing game. Watching Critical Role type of thing. I tried it once, bored the hell out of me. Now, that said, if I'm at the table and you guys are having a blast, it's because I'm in it, right? And this is like, I'm the observer character. I'm the audience who actually understands what the hell is going on. So this is pretty effing cool, man. This is awesome. So I could see Sean saying, I'm cool, man. You guys are having a good time. I'm enjoying this. No, keep going. I don't need to be, you don't have to entertain me. Stop breaking away from the cool stuff. Let my character be bored, because I chose to make him be bored. And
we had an experience like that in Alien recently. One of the characters was taken down by a critical hit, and we went through an entire session. I did at times try to get to him, and he was like, "No, it's okay." Right? And he was just role playing his injury. And we're also playing that game as a troop, so they do have alternate characters that they can switch to. And it's like, do you want to take on the role of this character or that character? No, I'm gonna stay in the focus. So it was exactly that. He was entertained by what was happening, and which was very nice. It was a nice gift to the rest of us. Not something I would want to, like, as a person with a friend who's playing with me, that I'd want to go from session to session to session, but it was pretty cool in that moment.
I think the nice thing in that, when that does happen, is there's a piece where it's almost like a thank you. As you said, it's very cool. It's a gift. And it's also this crazy flattering thing for everybody else involved, is like, this person is enjoying what you're doing so much, they're willing to, like, sit back. Okay, and they're not going to do this for 10 sessions in a row, because for God's sakes, who would do that type of thing? But when we talk about spotlight time, sometimes some people are like, look, I'm okay in this session or this chapter or this verse, whatever we want to have here, is in this piece of whatever story, I'm okay having a very small voice. That's okay. Pippin doesn't say a lot all the time in every chapter. That's okay. Right. And that's fine. And I think that's like where we're saying is there's multiple layers within each type of story we have. And I think part of the art of this is not only as players, but that a bit of introspection on the player part, going, you know what? I'm okay. I'll sit here for 3 hours and watch these guys have a good time. And I'm having fun watching my friends have fun. Gosh, look what she's doing. This is awesome. Yeah. And then as game master, sometimes we have to look at them and say, are you comfortable? Are you okay? Then if they say, yep, you can only ask your wife, do you still love me? So many times before she's ready to kill you. Right. So at a certain point, you just say, are you good? Yeah, no, I'm having fun. All right, Sean. I'll get back to you, type of thing.
And you have to trust them that they're telling you the truth.
Exactly.
But I did want to get back to that initial example of the person who won't go upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't want to go upstairs because they bought into the game because they wanted to play with you. But cosmic horror is not their thing. They actually don't want to be in a horror game. They want to be in something that's heroic, or they want to be in something that's scary, but in a different way. And this is one of those signals that tells us that, and here comes the word story, right? They're in the wrong story, regardless of whether it's product or byproduct. They're in the wrong place.
That's an interesting piece too, because you could decide, this sounds great. Yep, sure, I'll try that. And then you watch everybody else go through 5 characters. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I'm not going upstairs. Why? Because you. That's why I'm not going up these stairs, man. Because I don't want to make the 18th character in the group, right? Some people don't want that, and I think that's another interesting piece. When we talk about character story, There's an interesting piece I think about. Very curious about your take, Anthony. Is the player who in the game wants to make sure that their character has a very complete arc or a very complete story, a beginning, middle, end. They have this very specific. I want this to be the story of. I want to be able to tell this character's story, and I want to make sure it's very complete. And I have found, in my experience, sometimes depending who they are, how they react, and whatnot. Sometimes people get really kind of torqued if the character dies or something bad happens, right? They're playing in a game with critical hits and they're like, well, I'm paralyzed from the waist down and we're in the middle of the Badlands. Yeah, you are. Well, I don't want to make a new character. Okay, then. Well, I don't know what to do. It's not like, and I'm being overly facetious and silly about it, but there's some pieces there where I think you're right, where somebody goes, I didn't realize that I signed up for this. And that is, you know what? I don't like watermelon covered in chocolate. Thought it might be okay. Tastes like crap though. I'm not into this tonight. As soon as you get the first slice, like, wow, this is terrible.
Still sore at me about that watermelon
I am
covered chocolate covered watermelon I gave you.
A little sorry about that. But I think you're right, Anthony, though, is that, I've got a story, an arc I want to tell or I'm interested in being in. And maybe it comes back to what they signed up for isn't real. They found out it's not quite what they wanted.
Right.
Potentially. Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that thought.
That's a thing. So I came up with this phrase a while ago that genre is rule 0. So not the rule of cool or whatever, but genre is rule 0, meaning that what we do at the table, right, is going to define, right, our own particular idiom, our own genre, regardless of what we said we're going to do, right? So if you have the scholarly professor who's an archaeologist who's investigating the strange statue found in the swamp,
yep.
And we have the reporter, and we have the gangster on whose lands, he has stills on those lands where the statue is found. So they all have a reason to be involved. And then you have your pro wrestler, who we shoehorn in at the beginning and whatnot. We're going to have a very different kind of Lovecraftian tale with that pro wrestler involved than we would have if he had been a rich friend or the dilettante or whatever. Right, we're going to have a very different product coming out of that.
Well, even if you have somebody who's trying to play the professor investigating a thing, and their take on the scholarly professor is the nutty professor, right?
Exactly.
There's sometimes you get somebody like, oh, this will be great, this will be really cool, and they don't necessarily know how to say it. Maybe they don't even know how to say it. And next thing you know, where did the Marx Brothers come in here? Why suddenly I've got Three Stooges slapstick? What the heck just happened?
Right.
And I think you're right. That's Sean used to say, the truth is at the table. And I think genre is at 0 is right, because we can say this is going to be a cosmic horror role-playing game. That's the type of thing we're going to do. There's our genre. We're going to stick to that. That's great. And it turns out it's cosmic horror with a lot of black humor, because that's what we turned it into. And that's just how this is rolling. And if that starts to happen and Brett decides that's not what I signed up for, I don't like the black humor parts, I wanted this other thing.
Right.
Black humor has no place in the type of event I wanted to do, not only as byproduct or as go get, I'm kind of as product. I'm like, yeah, you could disconnect at that level, and you could have somebody who then doesn't want to play, but doesn't know how to back out yet.
Right, because like the session 0 that Sean brought up, there's this idea that you do it once and you're done. But the idea of, I don't know, I guess the cool phrase these days is checking in with people, right? It reveals itself as necessary. Like, why does Sean look unhappy at the end of every session? And he says, no, it was fine. But maybe it's exactly that experience. They don't know how to say it, or they don't yet know why this game wasn't as fun as the last game that we played. But there's only one way to find out. And if we're there as a group to have that group experience, then we have to interact. So we have this holy trinity that we talk about, which sounds kind of trite, but it's talk with the players, play the right game. And I say, don't be part of the problem, but most people say, don't be a dick. Right?
It's an all expectations kind of piece. And with Stars and Wishes, I think it's almost, if you can set that right up on the upfront, and then you get done with session one and everybody knows that you can go around the table or even do it offline and say, okay, what did you like? And what do you want to see more of? Right. And what would you like to see? What did you like? And what do you want to see more of? And I think that can help with the people that feel isolated or abandoned is a little strong. But,
there are games out there that clearly say, I will not abandon you, right?
Oh, is it really?
And guide you toward listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting piece here too, where we oftentimes we're playing together, we're having a really good time, and Brett says, I don't know, I'm not having fun. And then you think, why? What aren't you having fun? How can I fix this? So on and so forth. And sometimes it could be a personal thing. Like I begged off a game. I was going to play Fiasco at one point with Tom Flanagan from Nights and Night and a couple of the people. And we started playing the game, and I was in the process of, I had a fight with my wife. I was mad at my kids. I have a big job interview the next day. And I looked at the camera and I said, I can't play. And Tom said, you cool? I said, honestly, I'm not. I need to not do this right now. I am really, really sorry. I can't get into this. And everybody, to their credit, went, cool, man.
I would have never let you get away with it, Brett.
I know you wouldn't have, because you're a jerk. But I think there is and that's a quasi extreme example that, I was in bad headspace, as they say, right? Like, I'm like, I can't play tonight. This is not, I'm not going to have fun. I'm going to be a jerk. This is not going to be a good place. I need to quit. I'm done tonight. Sorry, guys. And everyone was super kind of cool about it. And there's a piece sometimes when we have our Stars and Wishes and we're talking about, hey, this is the tone we have. This is the genre. This is the story, as product and as byproduct, how we're pulling this together. How are you doing? And somebody may say, I don't like the type of story we're telling. And and that's okay. It's to continue with the story analogies in those terms. Like, do you like this author?
Yeah, exactly.
Some people, love Neil Gaiman. Some people, one of my friends thinks he's a hack. He cannot point directly to what exactly he thinks makes the man a hack, but he just has this visceral reaction. And quite frankly, he doesn't owe me or anybody else at the table. He doesn't owe us this deep thing. They can just have, I'm not having fun. Sometimes it could be a matter of, I'm not having fun with you, Brett, or I don't like this game, or whatever it is. I think a lot of times
the system, the setting.
Yeah, we feel we should be able to fix something for the person who's not having fun. And sometimes it's a case of, okay, cool, man. If you're not having a good time, you can bail. Eileen and I are still having fun. So we'll keep going with Sean. And, Anthony, maybe we'll catch the next one. Maybe we'll do something else you think is more fun next time. Cool. Peace out. And we're done. So
it has to be okay to do that.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's not that it's missing, but it's very natural for us, especially with friends and people you've gotten to know. Because crying out loud, if the three of us are playing, a weekly game, a bi-weekly game, and you play it for 6 months, and suddenly Anthony says, I'm just done. It's very natural for Brett to go, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Oh Lord, oh my, oh, I wrecked this story. Oh, we blew this up. Oh, we destroyed this. And sometimes people will stick around not have fun long past when they were having fun. And I had somebody tell me, I didn't want to ruin your story. I did have that told to me once. And I said, that's crazy, man. Why did you were not having fun for like a year? Really? We played like every week for a year, but you're not having any fun? No, I just didn't want to ruin your story. Everyone else was having such a good time. And it just felt like if I left, I'd let everybody down. I'm like, no, it's okay. It's just it's fine, man.
But yeah, there are a lot of sensitive people, I think, in gaming. What they're sensitive to varies.
Absolutely.
But now we have this problem, like you said, we want to fix it. How do I fix it? And again, we encounter this notion of story, right? Do I approach it like an author? Do we, as a group, approach it like an author and make some authorial writer's room level tweaks or like from an executive producer level, like you have to change this character, or Richie Cunningham can't have a brother anymore. Get rid of the brother and never talk about him again.
Yeah, whatever happened to Chuck, man?
He went upstairs at the end of season 1 and never came back downstairs.
Jeez,
Yeah,
exactly. They
exactly.
never even referred to him or anything.
He's still up there, as far as we know.
Yes. So it's nice to talk to people who get that reference. Oh my God. So, do we approach it on the story level as shapers of story, or do we look at it from the genre? Like, well, the cosmic horror isn't working, but the investigation is working. So let's just step away from the mythos and toward, haunted houses and things like that, and that will be enough. We don't change anything else, just change that, or open up the characters more, or realize that we said we were going to play horror, but what we actually are playing is comedy. So let's just relax and play comedy.
Yeah, that's
right. We have the same types of tools.
That's tricksy stuff there, because you get this, the camps that are like, if it seems to be an overwhelming consensus, it's pretty easy.
Right.
But I could tell you there's always like one guy that's playing a night at the Improv while the others are not really.
Yeah.
But they put up with him because he's the class clown.
Yeah.
At the table. And it's like, even if it's not within character. One thing I want to bring up is we've talked about a lot about story, and I know a few people where they're like, what is all this? What are we talking about? Why are they talking about story? You just play a game. So if you're going to play Old School Essentials, BX, just to throw out a couple examples, and you're going to roll up a character, I'm not going to write up a background. The background is through play. That is the background. When I'm level 3, my background is when I was level 2 and 1. And so the story, I may have a story about the time my party goes into went into the cave or the dungeon, like the convention when I meet you guys and say, oh, let me tell you what happened when Brett was on the Star Wars Game of Mine and he was sitting on the ship. That's a story I tell everybody. But it's a lot of them will say, I'm just playing a role-playing game. I'm creating a character. You're the DM. You tell me what's going on, and then we just play.
Right.
Like why the story comes through play.
Yeah, I think that would be Anthony's. My thought here is, Anthony, you would say, well, story's byproduct. That's what happens at the end of it. You're hardcore. Right. You are hardcore. I'm going to decide as the character, and based on all of us at the table making character-based decisions, we are not beholden in any form or any level of beholdenship, to a theme, a title, or a thing. We're just playing. And we are fine with whatever the outcome is. If the outcome was a crazy slapstick adventure, if the outcome was deadly serious with horrendous consequences, that's what happened. Anthony, that's what I would think makes sense based on what you were saying.
That would be byproduct. Okay. But what if the game master has a series? Let's say they have let's stick with the D&D analogy. They've got the Slave Lords series. They've got all of them. And they want to run you through all of them, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about BX anymore. We're talking about AD&D, but it's still pretty lethal, right?
Yes.
And they want the same characters from the beginning to go all the way through to the end and have an epic story. What a great experience this is going to be.
Hickman. He ruined it for everybody. Tracy Hickman. It's the Hickman, whatever they call it.
Oh, Dragonlance?
Well, have you ever heard of that theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what they call it, but
anyway,
go on, Anthony.
So this is the idea. Some people at the table may really be enjoying that. And some people at the table might not notice that anything is happening at all, right? Dice fudging, changing of numbers of opponents, all the things that allow characters to survive. They might not notice at all. So
or even care.
And some might not care. They might notice and not care. Right. And some will notice. It's like, this isn't the game I signed up for. It's as dangerous as making dinner. It's the risk is gone. The surprise is gone. Right. So you've got all those people. So how do you balance this? right? And sometimes you can't. So.
Yeah, that's interesting because I can sit down with a couple different people, and I said, hey, I have, against the giant, the giant series, or we're going to go Vault of the Drow. We're going all the way to the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, man. This is like the plan, or I don't tell you what the plan is, right? I ran my last Greyhawk game I ran for my home group. I was going to, depending on the decisions they made, it was going to be Return to the Tomb of Horrors, which is what it was. That's where they ended up going. I planted the right stuff, and they bid on all the right hooks, and then let them right into a big vast swamp. I didn't tell them, wham, here's the box set, kids. This is what we're going to play tonight. They had no clue. They didn't know. And I didn't surprise them per se, but it was like a follow the clues. So there were a couple people there that were playing character, byproduct. And I know my buddy Nick was very much interested in the plot. Like, what is really going on? And every once in a while, other people would rise up. I'm just saying rise up simply because I'm thinking it's like a quote unquote higher, not better, but just a different level above ground level where you're just making decisions. They were up there, and then they get up there, and he would drag a few people up there. But what does this mean? Is there a reason? And every once in a while, like Beta would look at him and go, who fucking cares, man? We're killing stuff. It's fine. We're doing the thing. It's okay. We saved this. Let's move on. It turned out that, yeah, there was a big thing going on, and people went, well, I'll be damned. That was kind of neat.
Exactly.
But that's not like that's magic to do, but I think there is being open to the fact, is what I'm hearing you say, is being open to the fact that you can play at different components and capacities within different levels within it, and that's cool. If as long as you're not destroying the genre, destroying the tone or something, it's like, look, if Brett wants to play, character hardcore byproduct story, me and DM Kojo, that's what we do. And you and Sean really want to understand the bigger, grander plot. I could be totally happy letting you guys go off a big, grand plot land, and I don't give a crap. That's totally possible. Right. I never thought about that, but as soon as you said it, that example came to my mind of my Greyhawk game. So that's interesting.
Yeah, sure. And you can see how those two they're not opposing viewpoints. Those two different viewpoints are completely compatible. They nestle within each other like the Russian dolls. And it never, ever has to come to, metaphorical blows over, you're playing wrong, you harshed my mellow or whatever.
What do you think of games that style themselves as a story game?
I think we open up a door of argument about what is a story game, which I'm not going to go through. But
damn, I tried to push him.
There's the door.
There's the door
right in front of you.
Pull.
What I will say is that there are games that provide you with system that allow you to manipulate things on that story layer.
When you say story layer, there are you saying character layer or the grander?
Yeah, like a character layer.
Okay.
There's just simply your experience, through the eyes of the character, the decision-making process of what will you as character do.
Got it.
There's that layer. On top of that is what should I do if it's cosmic horror investigation as this character, right? And then a layer above that, like a social layer, what should I do as this character in this genre that my friends will enjoy?
Okay, so if I think of so let me throw a quick one at you. So I think of Gumshoe, so Trail of Cthulhu. Their characters have basically driving force behind them. Like, hey, this is the thing that stops you from turtling. This is the thing that stops you from not going upstairs. My character is driven to explore the unknown. My character is, must find this, or this, must collect all gold, addicted to magic items, whatever your problem is, or driving force. That's your thing that helps you move your character through the story. And not that you're making bad decisions as a character, but making story appropriate decisions that help move things along in the proper genre approved, stamp of approval type of format. Okay. All right. I get you.
So that lets us have an in-character experience, right? Now, the game master playing that game is preparing scenes, right? And the clues are bridges from scene A to scene B. So they're having a completely different experience than you, the player, are, right? You can operate on that in-character level, but they're operating on working with building blocks of story in order to guide you through to a successful or failed investigation.
Yeah, and I think I like that. I like that thought that, well, first off, Sean, I've mentioned this before ages ago, but like, DM as player, right? We're all players. I just happen to have a special role if I happen to be the game master person or the person running the game. I get to see behind the curtain. So I think if nothing else, that's proof that as you said, they nestle like the Russian dolls. That's proof right there. The storyteller, game master, keeper, whomever, they're operating at that level and so on. And then when you take a game system that has a mechanic to it or a support structure of some kind that allows me as player to reach up into or behind the screen, so to say, and I can change a thing. I have a GM intrusion. I've got these options and pieces and parts where I can manipulate things outside of my character. I can spend this Benny. I can put this chip. I can make this move and influence the world. I can spout lore that is now factual.
Right. Or
so that
a contact or a relative that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So that can't happen in a vacuum. Like this can't happen in the silence of your head. You have to now have a conversation of, I'm going to spend this resource or I'm going to invoke this move or mechanic this mechanism in order to do this thing for this benefit, for this reason. So now you're having a conversation on the player layer of play, not on the character level of play.
Yeah, and then you've got
people's enjoyment.
Exactly. And the game master, she's sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, that fits. That works for this mechanic. I'm helping adjudicate where we all agree this is good. Let's move this around.
Right.
Yeah, and I know some people who dislike those mechanics because I don't mind them one way or the other. I've played with enough of each, and I know some people who dislike them because what they feel that there is like this. A buddy of mine said it's a sacred bond between. I'm like, dude, that's way too strong. Come on, there's nothing sacred here. We cuss, swear, and tell horrible jokes and roll dice, man. It's not that big a deal. Let's calm down. But it's for him. It was a very serious thing. Like, look, this is a purview, and I don't want to step back there. I want to play. Yeah. And I think if we had this discussion prior to that discussion, which is ages ago, I would have said, you want to make character-based decisions, and you don't want to worry about that stuff. Okay.
Right.
Why does it bother you if Sean wants to do that type of thing? And sometimes the answer is it actually viscerally bothers them too much to have anybody at the table do that, whether it's them or another player. They're like, okay, wrong game in the Trinity you spoke of, right? Wrong game.
Mm-hmm. Well, is it is it the wrong game or is it?
It's the wrong game for that person, not for the group. I'm like, this isn't fitting for you, sir, or madam, or whomever. They're not having fun. Everybody else enjoys hopping levels and playing and moving here. If this person does not, it's incumbent on them to
Well, that's
say so.
Right. Either we decide not to play it or they decide to absent themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Game from a joining of players to collaborate on something. Not game as in, well, this is the wrong D&D. Because there's some people that will, I think it's a style more than anything in that case.
Sure.
Right? Because
procedures.
Yeah, D&D people come up with, hey, okay, tell me the name of the bar. No, that's not my job. That's your job, Brett. You're the dungeon master. Yeah. You tell me the name of the bar. Anything environmental or in the world is supposed to come from the dungeon master. There's some people that are very
strongly
yes, like that's right. The deal. That's
and the reverse.
Yeah, and actually
reverse, for sure.
Which is, I think, all the more reason when we talk about, to go again to story and we say, all right, so there's, whether it's a writer's table game or whatever, let's just step aside for a second and just talk about stories, joint authorship, right? If that's a thing, collaborative or whatnot, and that's how TV shows and other things are written, is these men and women and folks that are in a room and they're deciding what's in, what's out, and so forth. And it's very rarely is there one person with an iron fist that says this is all there will be, right? It doesn't. It very rarely works that way. Even an author at some point, Tolkien had to send his stuff into an editor. He got in a fight with an editor because he wanted to say dwarf instead of dwarves, right? Dwarfs, not dwarves. Right. Made up word. You can't do that. No matter who, like Stephen King has an editor, right? So there's somebody working with you, pulling this together, helping figure things out. And we're cranking out rough drafts at the table every time. And I think as such, it's interesting to me for anybody to think that this is all in the game master's head, because if it is, and it's strangely enough that I'm like, well, then what are you here for? It's one of the things I say to them, like, so if this is all in my head and the world is mine, and I know what's going to happen before you do it, I don't need any of you players. I'll just write a novel. Right. But again, even then, somebody's going to help me
to speak, player. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how Brett runs.
No, I do. Maybe that's why no one wants to play with me.
Come on, don't sell yourself short.
Anthony, man, I love what you said here, and I thought it was very clearly articulated, and I think I get it, your perspective here, and I really appreciate it, because this is I like this. How you've separated the two, how you see them marry together, and so forth. I think there's, from an introspection perspective, I look at it and go, I can see where there's times when I've forced the two to clash, when I'm like, why was I doing that? Or when everything's just smooth as butter, I'm like, I wonder if I was like my Greyhawk game. I'm like, I was letting both things happen. If I continue to let both things happen, will that keep working? Yeah, I like this. This is pretty cool, man.
Cool. Thanks. It's hard, I think, because it's easy to have the reaction if you hear that you're being criticized.
Yes.
Like, I happen to like story as byproduct more than I like story as product as a player and as a game master. And I can accidentally sound positive about one of them more than the other. And if you are opposite to me, then you can hear that as criticism, and then conversation dies.
Yeah, because now I get to go, well, who the hell are you to say, how do you mean your gaming is better than mine? Is that, and there's poor Anthony, I didn't say anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my second hobby, Craig Shipman talks about collecting the books is his second hobby. But for me, my second hobby is looking at all the different pieces and pulling them apart and seeing, if they can be recombined in different ways. And I've asked that question, what did I do wrong, as often? And I'm trying to ask the question, what did I do right? Mm-hmm. And,
I think good game masters that want to heighten their, hone their craft, kind of as I'd thrown that around for the show, are always trying to look at themselves and see how they can be better, or even look at others to determine what to bring into their own game to make it a better experience for their players. Because I think we can easily come into the hobby and get this, transfer, this tribal knowledge bestowed upon us down one generation to the next. My older brother showed me how to play, and I've played in his games, and that's how he or my sister has game mastered for and so that's what I learn, and then I do that with my players, and then another play, and on and on and on. But now with the proliferation of social media and actual play and blogs and podcasts, that can all get thrown out the window now, and people can explore different perspectives and
yeah. Well, one of the things that Anthony, you said at the top, which I think is incredibly critical, is that we, as an RPG hobby, we are stealing everybody else's terms, because people are asking us, what's it like? And I firmly believe at this point, I've yet to be knocked off my belief stool on this one, is like, there's nothing else like it. There's stuff that's similar to us, and we are similar to other things, other hobbies, other ideas, and so forth. It's similar to improv. It's similar to writing a novel. It's similar to a writer's room. It's similar to this. It's similar to that. It is not the same, right? It's not an exact. Right. It is only similar. And as such, we steal and borrow things. And I think that's okay. I don't think it would be wonderful if we could all get together at, the RPG summit that Sean's going to organize, and we'll get together and figure out what all the right terms and tools are. But
it's some
in lieu of
governance around
governance,
stuff,
but
sure.
in lieu of the proper governing body of RPG terminology, I like the idea, folks like you, Anthony, putting this kind of thought in a way to break it down. I know the guys at Misdirected Mark years ago they talked about layers and different things and different approaches. And some of that stuff would saying to me, and some like, I don't know, that just doesn't work for me. And that's okay. And I think that one of the cool parts is that someone like yourself is like, for story or story is byproduct, and talking about it like that sings to me. I may use this thing. I would know for a fact I will use this analogy in this discussion with my gamer friends and so forth. And somebody will probably be like, "Ooh, that makes sense." And somebody else will be like, "I don't know if I buy it." Totally legit. Absolutely legit. And I think the more we come up with ways to use our borrowed terms effectively to help us get our point across, I think is all the better. And the more we can do to not take somebody saying, I like gaming this way better than this other way, as being critical of me or how you all like to have fun, I think the better off we'll be. So I just, I think that your idea here has a lot of goodness to it. And the fact that we're stealing story and all that stuff is totally fine. And I think it's worth thinking about, man. So this is good. I like this.
Cool. Thanks. It was certainly nice to engage in conversation, not only with people of an age, let's say. But yeah, that also have the habit of listening to what's being said, just as an idea. Like, let's talk about the idea and let's misshape it and pull it and test it. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good stuff. So I want to thank Brett and Anthony both for joining us on this episode of GM Mastermind. You can follow them. We'll have links to where you can find them in the show notes, of course. And so, go and check out Anthony's podcast and Brett's Streets of Avalon. And again, thanks so much, guys, for being on the show. Much appreciated. And remember, be a positive force in the tabletop RPG hobby. See ya. This episode of GM Mastermind produced with help from the following members of the Mind: Joe Swick, Zagrave, Mirko Froelich, Tony Sugarloaf Baker, Polish Ogre, Larry Hollis, Huskarl, Harrigan, Farty McButterpants, Laramie Wall, Aaron Ralia, Wayne Peacock, Ron Bishop, Ghost GM, Old School DM, Craig Shipman, Larry Hout, John Mahoney, Yorkus Rex, Eric Salzwedel, Phil McClory, Jason Hobbs, Michael O'Holland, Remy Bilodeau, Crystal Eggstad, Eric Avia, Feelin' Good Lewis, Eric Jeppesen, Vornak, Brian Kurtz, Chad Glayman, Jim Ingram, Orcus Dorcas, Chris Shorb, Ty Prunty, and David F. Baylog. Thanks for the support. Really appreciate it. If you found this entertaining, let a friend know. Have them pull it up in their podcatcher of choice. Give us a listen. Really appreciate that.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.